So welcome everybody to episode 324 of Pero Let Me Tell You. And you probably heard a bit of a soothing voice that's not Ish, because Ish is out today. And that is the one, the only, our last week's last soda recipient, one of our favorite people, Junior Alonso. And he is going to be co-hosting with us.
And
so welcome.
I would want to say that Ish also has an incredible voice to listen to. So
really, I don't feel that way, but I've been listening to his voice even prepubescent. So you know,
that's why it comes from a different part for you.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even know what his voice sounds like in terms of distinctively because you know we've been friends since we were 10. Wait, you know what's funny, when you get married, you say till death do you part, but really it's your friends. Because like, don't you have that one friend or a couple of friends?
Oh no, I have. I've been assembling the Avengers through the year.
Right.
One of my best friends is literally from 3 years old.
Right. So over 30 years
old, over 30 years.
Yeah, that's a long time. And that is
till death do us part.
Yeah. Because like Ish and I have been friends for so long, and you know, I'm very lucky. I've had a lot of friends. My close group of friends are people that I'm very, very close to, and I've been so since I was a kid. And it's funny because like when you think back now, it's like, like 25, 30 years. That's a long time.
And I don't know what it is, but our parents, I feel like, don't have that many of those style friends.
Well,
the relationships that lasted that long.
You know, our parents had to immigrate.
Bueno, eso es diferente, ¿verdad? Yo no tenía tiempo para amigo.
That's so true.
Tú con tu sleepover y amigo, yo no tenía tiempo práctica ni nada.
Tenía 3 trabajos y después cuando vinimos aquí a la Yuma, tú sabes.
Teníamos que estar pinchando y
ya. No, and you said your parents came in during el Mariel.
En Mariel,
right, during el Mariel. So, you know, la cosa estaba mala en ese tiempo.
En los 80 llegamos ahí, no. Fíjate, esto estaba que nadie podía.
Y después en Miami estaban los marimberos.
No, seguía la fiesta con ellos y imagínate, no se podía disfrutar.
You know that I'm old enough to remember, because I'm a few years older than you. I'm old enough to remember. I mean, I was a kid. I was really small, but I'm old enough to remember the era of marimberos. So then I remember, obviously we all know the show Miami Vice. I remember when Miami Vice was like on for real, like first run. I was a kid. I was really small, but I remember. And the thing about Miami Vice was that it was shot on location, right? So I remember we would be, one day and specifically, we were at Town and Country Mall in Kendall, and a certain part of the mall was closed because they were shooting Miami Vice. So, like, I remember that whole era where, like, people from Miami got a little bit upset that Miami Vice, a show, gave this image of Miami being filled with like drug dealers and like the drug trade, and I'm like, but it's all true. Like, it's not the only thing Miami did, but I mean, no lies were detected, you know?
No. And I've explained this to people too. The First 48, they have one of their like anchor locations in Miami.
Yeah.
Because what you saw in Miami Vice happens in real life, and it still continues to happen. And it's funny that you mentioned the word marimbero and you being at the birth of this word and seeing that. What was the other like locations that maybe were hit up around that time that you can like recite that were like real life movie sets? But
well, like for example, I remember in the 80s when I was a kid, like 8th Street, but Tamiami Trail 8th Street, that's where the marimberos lived. That it was like newish construction, right?
Hold on, because that's my family's out in unincorporated Dade.
Well, but this is like
Tamiami Trail,
right? This is but like the Tamiami Trail west of the Turnpike,
yes,
right? Much west of the Turnpike,
yes.
A lot of those houses tenían tremendas rejas.
Okay.
Because of that. And then obviously like downtown, you know, and the beach. Look, I remember in the late 80s and early 90s, I'm old enough to remember this. Again, I was a kid, but I remember when Ocean Drive was abandoned and that all those restaurants you've seen on Ocean Drive, those were like little hotels. Some of them are still hotels, but they're like boutique hotels now. But there were little hotels que afuera tenía like little viejitos that were just, just waiting to die. Because that's what they would say about Florida, right? Florida, you come when you're just waiting to die, right? Yeah. And it's funny because I have such a different image. We have such a different image from Florida growing up here. But I remember that all that was really run down, and we would not go to Ocean Drive because that part was like, eso era candela. So much so that the famous scene from Scarface,
I was about to ask
with the chainsaw was in Ocean Drive.
In the shower and everything. And what hotel was that one?
I think it's the hotel or the building where Johnny Rockets was at.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think that Johnny Rockets closed, but Johnny Rockets was there for a while.
Johnny Rockets.
I think it's that building or it's the one nearby, but it's Ocean Drive for sure.
Is Johnny Rockets still around in general?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I hadn't seen the Dolphin Mall one, gone.
I don't know about...
And all of Sunset Place is gone.
The last time I went to Johnny Rockets was on a cruise.
They have it on cruises
because on
too?
Royal Caribbean they have Johnny Rockets on the ship, which is great. So it's like vamos a comer Johnny Rockets. But oh yeah, you know what? Now that you said Sunset Place, I have to tell you that again, this is for OG Miami people. If you're not from Miami and you're listening to us, fast forward for the next few minutes. But Sunset Place is closing.
I know
that I have to tell you that hit hard because I'm sure like you and like many people probably our age, like late 20s, 30s and 40s, we had our formative years going to Sunset Place.
Yes.
That movie theater,
It's the only thing that is existing right now from it. That's what I've heard. Every report that I've heard, they're turning it into some sort of like foodie courtyard.
What, the whole thing?
Yeah, I believe so.
No, they're knocking down the whole thing. Completely. So interestingly enough, that AMC in Sunset Place is I think the second highest revenue. It's AMC with the second highest revenue in the country. Even though the whole shopping center is dead, people still go to that shop. That movie theater is great.
It's incredible.
That's a great movie theater.
The layout of it, everything, how it's split into two, and it has like its arena style towards the back.
Yeah,
and
that is a real shame.
And for events, because a lot of the premieres and the screenings were happening at that specific one. If it wasn't happening on the beach,
right?
I forgot the exact AMC that it was on the
Regal
beach,
on Lincoln.
Regal on Lincoln. It was happening at AMC 24 at Sunset Place.
That was lit for, it's still sort of lit when everything else is not
just
lit.
That, yeah.
The only thing left there is Barnes & Noble still open.
Okay.
And Barnes & Noble has been open there since it first opened in 99. And Sunset and the AMC.
I remember they had the skate ramp in one of the stores. The Virgin Records at the end.
The Virgin Records store. I remember I saw at that AMC The Matrix 1, 2, and 3. Hey, listen, you never forget where you saw The Matrix, right?
I saw The Matrix 1 at, I don't know what it was called, at Regal.
Yeah.
Regal Palace 18.
Oh, yeah, the Palace.
That's what it was called because that was my side of town. Closer to the Marimberos, west of.
Want to know something funny? Fun fact about that Regal? That was the first movie theater in Miami with stadium seating. Yeah, I remember the first movie I saw there was Selena, and I was like, "What is this stadium seating thing? Like, this is incredible."
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was the first one. And
they're kind of like avanzado for being where they're at because they were the first ones to do the reclining seats in that area. And then they the McStuffins bar.
I think the McStuffins bar, yeah.
They were the first ones to have that too in Palace 18.
Yeah.
La Pela.
You know what? The thing is that I'm a movie buff. I love going to the movies.
Same.
And you know what? If you're the same, then you probably agree. I don't care how good your TV is. I don't care how good your sound system is. It's not the same.
No, at all.
It's not the same.
That experience, like, you can't recreate it.
No.
It's the same thing like you were mentioning earlier about going up to Orlando and Disney. Mm-hmm. It's the same thing as like watching Mickey on TV or your kids watching Mickey on TV and then seeing Mickey in real life. that experience is completely different.
Yeah. I wouldn't call myself a Disney adult. I'm not like obsessed with Disney, but I do like going to Disney. And I like Disney movies.
I like Disney, not the location.
No. Nothing's perfect.
Me entra ansiedad.
Nothing's perfect. Do you like Disney movies?
Yes.
What's your favorite like Pixar Disney movie?
Disney, Pixar. I mean, Up.
Listeners.
Up.
What's your favorite Disney Pixar movie?
We got Up.
Up is up there on my list too. The Scene con la Viejita.
Toy Story was the first.
Toy Story was the first.
Bugs Life was
the second.
I would say Toy Story probably. Up, man. Up. Wall-E.
Wall-E is super underrated.
Wall-E.
Nobody ever talks about Wall-E.
I named my miniature pincher R.I.P. He gave us incredible 11 years, but his name was Wall-E.
Wall-E
from the movie, and I even wrote it. Wall-E. Yours?
Up is probably in my top 3 because till this day I am not emotionally mature and capable of seeing the beginning of the movie when they show the montage where his wife dies. I just can't. I can't take it. I would put up there as well Toy Story 3 because I still have PTSD from the furnace scene. I was not ready for that. I think that movie should come with a disclaimer. Like, you know the part when all the toys hold each other when they're going to the furnace and they accept their impending doom? I'm like watching this. I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, when that movie came out, I was like 30. I was like, I'm older than the demographic this is for, and I'm struggling with this. What the hell are you doing to the kids? Like,
was this a movie that you were weeping in the because you said
weeping?
Forget about the TV and everything. You were weeping in theaters.
And I really like. I think it's beautifully done. Is Inside Out?
Yes,
it's beautifully done.
I haven't seen the second one, but yes, the first one.
The first one is incredible, and the second one, you know, obviously, like any sequel, you're kind of like, yeah, you know, is it going to be as good? And obviously, you know that in the second one, she's a teenager now, so she's going through puberty, and just the way they present that is just so. Obviously, it's supposed to be a little bit funny and it's supposed to be entertaining and wacky, but at the same time, it has such a heartfelt message, and it's so perfectly crafted that I watched that movie and I'm like, God. I feel that like when you finish watching a lot of these Pixar movies, like you need a little bit of therapy after like a couple of sessions of like, I need to express how I feel.
I think Pixar is attacking all the childhood trauma that the other movies gave us back in the day. Because it's all these messages. Like Coco has a bunch of incredible messages and family and everything. And this movie Soul's another one that's super underrated. Like Inside Out, like that it pulled at the heartstrings, pun intended. Like it's incredible. And I remember in high school, Finding Nemo came out.
Oh my gosh!
And that movie had everyone in a chokehold. Yeah. Same thing. We were in high school, and the weekend after that movie came out, teenage boys
that I would.
Did you see that movie?
I would randomly go up to people and go, 6424 Wallaby Way, Sydney, Australia. And people be like, I've heard that before. I'm like, you don't know what it is? No, I've heard that before. It's a dentist office. Wallaby
Only
Way,
the
Sydney,
real ones
Australia.
get it.
I'm like, it's a dentist office, dude. Don't you know?
The Australian current,
There's just so many of them. Oh my God, funny story. So I was fortunate enough a few years ago to go to Australia, and I swam the Great Barrier Reef. And do you remember that in Finding Nemo, what was Nemo always told? Where was he told not to go nearby?
Well, you couldn't touch the butt. Was one thing,
but you couldn't go to the drop off.
Oh yeah,
the drop off. That was like, we don't go to the drop off. So I remember I was like leisurely swimming, you know, in the Great Barrier Reef, and you know, the Great Barrier Reef is one of these things that it's really hard to describe because it's just the enormity of it. It's hard to really put in words. Not only the beauty of it, but again enormity of it and how like you marvel at it. And it looks like Finding Nemo. It's like all these colors and all that. And I remember I was like leisurely snorkeling and diving through the Great Barrier Reef. And then all of a sudden, you know, you lose a little bit, not of track of where you're at, but you're kind of like looking at around. And then all of a sudden, I see this enormous precipice. And then, you know, the light is hitting it. And I'm like, oh, this is where they told Nemo not to go. So this is the drop off. So I'm just going to turn my little ass around and go back my merry way. Because that did not end well for Nemo.
Were you there to try and see what that was about or no?
No, I had always wanted to go to the Great Barrier Reef, and I had a chance to do it, but yeah, I was like, no. If Finding Nemo taught me one thing, is that we don't go near the drop off. But it was like, I remember it was like this enormity, and then since it was really bright out, you could really see like the sun coming through the water, so it really lit up the ocean, and then you just saw where like the, you know, bright blue and turquoise just started getting deeper. And I'm like, yeah, we're turning around. We're turning this ship around. Are you kidding me? Like, especially in Australia, that everything is lethal. Like,
no, down under. No, you went under there.
Yeah,
almost.
But if anybody has a chance to go to Australia, I recommend it. It was an incredible.
I'm gonna try one of these segues here and see if I can tie the bow here, but. In Disney, they teach the characters to give out hugs and not to let go until the kid lets go, because that kid really needs that hug. You just mentioned Australia. Now, kind of like Australia, next to it, New Zealand.
Yes.
New Zealand, this tiny city in New Zealand called Dunedin, which is actually the same city that JC is from here in Florida. In New Zealand, the airport there is limiting people to having 3-minute hugs when they say bye to each other.
Limiting people.
Yes, because you don't want that hug to create traffic for the rest of it. Now,
wow.
I ask you, as a Cubano.
No. Are you kidding me?
All I kept thinking about was whenever we leave someone's house, how it takes us 15 minutes in the driveway, another 20 minutes down the road.
We did here on Pero let me tell you, we did it last year. Maybe now that the holidays are coming up, we'll repost it. We did the 2-hour Latin goodbye. There's the announcement. Nos vamos. Nos vamos. Then after like 20 minutes, you get up. There's the getting up.
Yeah.
There's the getting up. You physically get up, right? So then you're standing for a little bit. Right. So now we're about 20, 25 minutes from the initial announcement. So you're standing up probably for like a good 10 minutes. Right. So now this is the long one. You walk to the front door of the house, a la puerta. And that's really where Congress like congregates. Like that's where really you start having the deep discussions at the front door of the house. Right. Entonces la alarmas or the ring is sort of going off because it's picking up, you know, speaking of the sensor, it's picking up movement. And
the dog's barking because you're almost leaving.
Right, and then la tia's like, ay, esa alarma de mierda.
The icebreaker is, ay, no sabía cuando pusiste esto. Like something nice.
So then you're in the door for like half an hour to 45 minutes. That's a long stretch. And then sometimes if you're really inspired, you'll walk to the car. Go tropelaje to the car. And then you finish the conversation in the car. And then after all the time, they'll be like, ay, vamos a tomar un café antes que nos vamos. And then you go right back inside and then repeat.
45 minutes down the drain.
Yeah. But okay, I know we sort of exaggerate, but isn't it true though?
No. It's 100% true.
It's 100%
It's 100% true. The no was to the exaggeration. I think that was a good, accurate play-by-play.
Yeah.
Because I've been a part of anywhere from 20 minutes, no exaggeration, anywhere from 15, 20 minutes to an hour and 15, 20 minutes. Because of what you said, we started all over again. So no, it's not an exaggeration. I think it's impossible for us to be giving 3-minute hugs or goodbyes, especially in the airport, where if they could walk through the gate with you, tu mamá y tu papá y los abuelos, everyone would go walk you onto that plane y ir contigo.
Listen, I've said this many, many times on the show. To me, one of the sort of when I moved to the Midwest, and you moved to Chicago, so you lived there for a while, so maybe you could attest to it the same as well. One of the biggest culture shocks, me coming from a Cuban and Latin family to hanging around Americanos, is just how different they are with their families. And you know what? I'm not even saying that one is better than the other, right? I'm not saying one is right or wrong. It's just, it's different, right? One of the movies that I think best captures this is, did you ever see Fools Rush In with Salma Hayek and
Matthew Perry?
Matthew Perry. I would say Chandler. And Matthew, Perry, rest in peace. The part at the end where he was sort of saying like, oh, because I have to deal with my parents. And she's like, I don't have to deal with my family. Going to my family's house is not something I deal with. It's not something that I have to just put up with. It's my family. And I thought that movie, and of course, My Big Fat Greek Wedding, perfectly captured that, because that's something that I found was such a difference between like me and my relationship with my family and or Latin families, con Americanos, that like family. And then again, I'm not saying there's a right or wrong answer and that we're right and they're wrong, or that, we love our kids more. It's just, it's different. Our parents, our family are part of your everyday life. It's not somebody you just call every now and then. Mm-hmm. Like I remember when I was living in Michigan, my grandmother would always be the one who would wake me up in the morning to go to school. Right. So when I moved to Michigan, she would still call me every morning. And honestly, I was already well awake. I had been awake for like an hour already on my way, doing this stuff in my day. But I let her do that. Yeah. Because, she would call me and we would talk. And, it's funny, my grandmother passed away 2 years ago. And it's like one of the things I think about now, like those 3 years that my grandmother would call me every single day a despertarme, because she did that when I was in school. And it's different. Like I remember, my American friends would call their parents like 3 or 4 times a month. And I'm like, a month? or I liked when like my parents or my friends and family would go visit in Michigan, they would stay in my apartment. And my American friends would be like, how are they staying in your apartment? I'm like, are they supposed to stay in a hotel? Like,
yeah, we've been doing it forever. What do you mean?
I don't know. Was that your experience when you were living in Chicago? I mean, I know Chicago is a little bit more multicultural.
Yeah, a lot of it was more homey. So some of the people were like, my parents are coming into town. I can't wait for you guys to meet them. Like, so you did have that I don't want to say like Latino background, but that type of homey family, tight knit family. But then, you had a lot of the fuck you, mom. Yeah, you don't know me. Like, fuck you, dad. I don't. And it was crazy to me, but it was. I had seen it before too. Like, I had friends growing up, even here in Miami, that were kind of like acting out, and I'd be like, that shit will never fly where we're from. No. And there was a tighter rope from my end. Like, I wasn't allowed to sleep over.
Of course not. You're Cuban. We don't do sleepovers.
And then if someone's sleeping over, they're related to you pretty much. Sleepaway camps were no.
Porque así pasan las cosas.
Así pasan las cosas. Porque si no. And then I told Marcela this episode from someone who gets it with Marcela here on Cultura Talks. So I told her, porque si no que? Like, we grew up without living past the porque si no.
No, you don't. That's the drop off. You don't go past that. You don't go past. You don't ask any questions. You just swim back.
Keep swimming. Just keep swimming.
Do a 3-point turn and keep swimming back.
Porque si no is the drop off.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. O porque lo digo yo. That's it. No questions asked.
Final say. It is what it is. One of those.
Sleepovers? No. Tú no puedes tenerle confianza a nadie. Y tú no sabes quién va a entrar a esa casa.
Claro que no. Because on that night is when everything happens.
Of course.
Cuando tú estás ahí es
Of course. That's when the creepy, cringy uncle comes and all, all that shit. Look, I see it sort of down the middle. Like, as a parent, like, I would never, I don't feel comfortable letting my kid, but my kid is, he's still a little kid. I wouldn't feel comfortable him having a sleepover with, like, well, a family member, yeah, but certain family members, with like kids, like parents that I know from school, like we're not there. Nor would I ever want like the responsibility of, at least now, of parents dropping off their kids on my house. Porque pasa algo, and then, the kid falls down or hits himself. And, now we live in this ultra litigious world. So you got to be very, very thoughtful about that. But now that you mentioned Chicago, or we were mentioning Chicago, I wanted to talk about something you've shared with me. Conversations that we've had, that you were, you had like a cushy executive job, right?
No.
Oh, well, but before you went to Chicago,
I was working in entertainment, hospitality, and
right.
nightlife, but it was not a cushy job, but I was comfortable.
Right. That's what I meant. Like, you could have said set, in the sense that you were doing well.
I was doing a lot to be set, right. But yes.
But then you sort of had a moment where you said, I gotta, this is what I want to do. You moved to Chicago. You got into comedy. And, I think about that as sort of like a second act. And the reason I wanted to bring this up is, in a way, like, that sort of has been my trajectory, similar but different, because, 323 episodes, people know, that I went to law school, an attorney and all that. I worked at a big firm, then private practice. And, it wasn't until I was in like my late 30s that I was sort of like, this is not, I knew for a while it didn't make me happy. It didn't fulfill me. The number in the bank account may have been nice, but I just didn't feel fulfilled at all. And it wasn't, again, until I was like in my actually mid 30s that I was like, I don't know if I could do this until I retire. Because I would get no fulfillment out of it. And I also realized, which I had always known, that I'm a very creative person. And I think when you're a creative person, you need an outlet. Mm-hmm. And if you don't find that outlet, like, bad things happen, right? You need an outlet, whatever that outlet is. And that's right around the time that we started doing Pero Let Me Tell You, which for me has been a huge creative outlet. And it's funny enough that you would think that Ishmael, in our case, being like, Ishmael loves to paint and draw and comic books and all that. And I'm like the scholarly lawyer, right? You would think that he would be the creative and I would be like the business one, right? And it's actually quite the contrary. He's like the business one, like the get shit together, and I'm the creative one. So I wanted to bring this up because I know that you've had a similar trajectory. And what was it for you? I call this like the second act, right? Sometimes our second acts start earlier in life. Like, I think that for us, it probably started earlier, in our 30s. Not, a lot of people do their second acts in their 60s, which is fine. You got there when you got there. So what would you say was one of the things that sort of made you pivot and say, I got to do this and I got to do this now. So if I got to move to Chicago, then I'm doing it.
I mean, it goes back to the shout out that I gave Marcella. Yeah. I spoke about it on that podcast. I just hit rock bottom, mental health wise and everything, because it was the finish line kept getting extended for me, where living the life that everyone said you should do X, Y, and Z to reach. And then I reached that and it's empty.
And now what?
Feeling empty. And now what? Because it didn't feel like you're climbing a mountain. You got to the peak. Now climb down onto the next one. No, it was like there's only one mountain. They made it seem that way. And it's like when I climbed that one, I thought we keep going after this. And no, I just have to live here somehow. Like, so for me, it was literally hitting rock bottom after climbing that mountain that wasn't mine. And the pivot happened when I just like literally looked inward onto what is the thing that I feel like I should be doing, or what is the thing that I've been doing my entire life as a job? Maybe I haven't gotten paid for it, but what is that thing? And it's as silly as just being silly and making people laugh and connecting people.
Yeah.
Because what I was doing, I didn't have a cushy job or whatever. I was working in nightlife, hospitality, entertainment, sports, creating experiences, memorable moments for people. So it was like, I just felt I was running these sports reference suicides in the gym, like going line to line, and just staying in this gym instead of just like walking my own race, no matter how long it takes and where I'm going, outside of this one gym, this arena that I was told to stay in. When I hit rock bottom, I checked with myself and I went back into time. And I said, what is it, the thing that you do most natural and all of that? And it was wanting to create these moments. I mentioned previously that I'm a PBS kid.
Yeah.
So I grew up on a lot of these, like making happy moments happen and like finding ways of like creativity and educational and building community and all of those, like inclusion. So I wanted to feel included. I wanted to feel, I wanted to go somewhere that I was appreciated, celebrated instead of tolerated.
Right.
Like I say a lot.
I like that, celebrated instead of tolerated.
Yeah. And when I started doing my history, Chicago was the place that I had to go because I wanted to get into comedy. I wanted to get into specifically improv and sketch comedy. And then doing the research on, there's the big three when it comes to that: New York, Chicago, and LA. But specifically, everyone has like cut their teeth through Chicago, or the pipeline of Toronto and Chicago, doing you're talking about second act, Second City. That's where like the North Star for a lot of comedians.
Right.
And when I just realized like that's who I've always been, that's who I was, this is what I needed to do to commence this second act. Because the first one didn't work, and the first one wasn't even for me either. When I really look back at it, it was like a special dedication to everyone that wanted me to do whatever, be whatever.
That's what I think is important of that, because, you know, you can make the argument that the first one did work. It just didn't work for you. It didn't feed your soul, who you are. Because that's certainly where I struggled with this. To a certain extent, I still struggle with it for so long that, you know, to what you're saying, what you're supposed to be doing, right? Because I remember, you know, I was always like that kid that I was very smart. I had a really good grade. So there was a certain expectation that I was going to go all the way in school because that's what you do, right? And I think also, which, you know, we're not the first people to touch upon this, but it is a very true thing, is the whole first generation sort of pressure that like your parents are immigrants, they came here so you can have a better life. So you feel sometimes like this weight on your shoulders that it's like, but what about if I don't want to do this? What about if I'm perfectly happy doing whatever it is you want to do, that maybe it's not their definition of success, right? And I remember, I mean, I wouldn't say I would ever regret going to law school, because I had a fantastic time. And for me, again, it's a personal thing. I always wanted to go all the way in school. Like I wanted to have like a PhD or a doctorate in something, because for me, that's who I am. Like I'm very about that, the intellectual part of it. And I'm really, really happy that, like, for example, now with everything going on, like, I know the Constitution. Like, I specialized in law school and con law. But if I were to do it all over again, you know what? I probably wouldn't do it. And I know that you're supposed to say...
None of it?
No, well, no.
Because you did say you were into it.
But you know what, though? I think that I don't regret it in the sense that I'm okay with it, right? And I'm okay where it got me. But I'm also not going to sit here and be like, well, you know, it made me who I am today. If I were to go back in time, knowing what I know now, I'd be like, hell no. Like, I would do something completely different. Because again, I think that for me, and maybe that's why I say it's similar, different, but similar to what you went. I always knew that I was a creative kid, but I was also like, an intellectual kid. And I think society puts a bigger pressure on you to go the intellectual route, because I was like, oh, you can't be in entertainment. That who gets paid? That's so, you're so smart. Like, why would you do that? Why would you go into that creative outlet? Again, especially coming from immigrant parents. Like, are you kidding me?
No chance.
I mean, are you kidding me? And I think that for a long time, I don't know if I repressed it or I just didn't pay attention to it, but I am a very creative person and I sort of didn't have an outlet. And I think that, again, when you're creative, you have to have an outlet, whether that's writing, painting, acting, whatever the medium may be. I think you need to have an outlet. And I think that what happens to so many people, that's why I think your story is really interesting, is that so many people, like what you did, that, you had to hit rock bottom to get there, but you got there, right? So many people just feel trapped, right? Because then maybe they're married or they have kids, or what I saw early on in my legal career, and I saw this all the time. I remember when I worked at the firm, I worked at a very big firm that, off the gate, you were making six figures, right? Imagine being like 27 years old, straight out of law school, and you went from not making anything to like making six figures. It's very enticing, right? But I remember the moment I started in that environment, I was sort of like, I never want to be a partner. Like, that is something that I never want to be a partner in a law firm. And I see that there's so many people here that are unhappy. They're always complaining about work-to-life balance. They're always complaining about how they have no life and how they're miserable, but they can't leave it because guess what? Now they have the nice house, they have the nice car with the nice vacations,
and they trap themselves in a way.
You trap yourself, and then it's harder to move it. I mean, in my particular case, I was like, I can't do firm life forever, and I left and I opened up my own practice and I started from zero. But I think so many times people are trapped, whether it's for financial reasons or just commitments and all that stuff. And I think that those second acts, as I said, so many times people either don't get to their second act or they get it much later in life, not even in your 30s. Sometimes in your 30s, you think eres tremendo viejo, but really you're not.
You can restart then, for real.
Yeah.
Well, you were mentioning about 60, restarting in 60, it'll be more difficult. You had this occasion happen in the mid 30s, your pivot, right? So same for me. We're navigating, and you've been able to navigate and stuff. So you didn't want to be partner. You didn't want to see your name on the wall. Like,
hell no.
Like in Suits, how they're always like.
Although Suits is my favorite show.
Is it?
Okay, Suits is my favorite show.
Show period, like for
not of all time, but it's in my top 5, and I could recite lines from Suits. Like This is a thing on Pero Let Me Tell You, is me on Suits. Well, we had Gina Torres on the show.
Wow.
Jessica Pearson.
Yes.
And I think I may have mentioned it to you or to somebody here. I'm like, when we had her on the show, I told her at the beginning of the interview, I told her, Gina, we cannot talk about Suits at the beginning because then that's all we're going to talk about.
The whole episode is
so
Suits.
Let's talk about the show you're in now, like your background, and then we'll get into Suits, because otherwise it's just going to be me being a total fanboy over her. Which, by the way,
I love that.
I want to say this, since, when we started the podcast, this is why sometimes you have to, what's the saying, put things out there. When we started the podcast, Dish and I, we were like, well, if this goes on for 10 episodes, we'll be lucky, right? We had a dream list of guests, and he had his and I had mine. And my number one dream guest was Gina Torres, because, we like to have like Latin guests or Miami based guests. And she's Cuban. Not a lot of people know Cubana.
Yeah.
She was number one on my list. And I'm thinking, like, this woman is never going to be on our show. Like, we're these two idiots from Kendall in Miami. Like, and we opened up a podcast with, like, horrible audio. Like, like, there's no way that she or anyone will ever be on our show. And 5 years later, she was on our show. And I was like, whoa, be careful what you put out there, because sometimes it does happen.
If you can dream it, you can do it.
Yeah. So,
Jessica Pearson.
Yeah. You watch Suits?
I watched all of it.
Oh, so good.
I watched all of it.
So good. So freaking good.
Harvey and Mike, that relationship, man, like from it being this like somewhat of a rival, somewhat of a brotherhood, somewhat of a mentorship, like all of that in one, a lot of lessons learned in that show.
You know when a show is good when you have a hard time deciding who's your favorite character, or you go through phases where you have different favorite characters. Because I love Jessica Pearson. I've always said it. She's like badass. Like I love these strong, powerful, like female leads. But then obviously Mike and Harvey are the heart of the show, and just the chemistry between them two was great. But then freaking Louis Litt stole every scene.
Yeah, he's a firecracker. But then Donna's also a sniper.
Donna,
you get me? So she's like the silent killer that always comes into a scene, and you're like,
that you're kind of like, what? What just happened here? Anyway, I think this is a good part to hear from our sponsors. Take a break and hear from our sponsors, because if not, we're going to turn this episode into like a Suits rewatch party. So here's a word from our sponsor.
It's the holidays again. Time for families to come together and enjoy flan, mac and cheese, un pumpkin pie, a little coquito. The list goes on and on. But do you know what brings all those delicious holiday favorites together? The delicious, creamy taste of dairy, like the kind we get from Florida Milk. And this holiday, our Florida dairy farmers are also giving you the perfect recipes at floridamilk.com or lechedeflorida.com. Así que whether you're celebrating Thanksgiving or Nochebuena, don't forget to add some dairy to the celebration.
We are back. So, Junior, I heard you a couple of weeks ago or some time ago say that you were trying to get a flip phone. Did that happen? As I see you with your iPhone?
it has not happened yet. No.
But do you still want it to happen?
Yes, I do. My last iPhone actually had a button, which I got on purpose. It was the iPhone SE. The iPhone 14 was already out. And I said, what is your oldest iPhone? And they said, why do you want to do that? And I said, because I want a flip phone.
Right.
They said, why do you want to?
Right.
It's just because I would like to take a step back from the amount of technology. I was actually having this conversation with Chris earlier. Chris is a young and sprawling 21 years old, and he has been born with nothing but technology around, nothing but the internet.
Chris doesn't know life before the internet
at all. No, he's 2003 Marlins winning the first World Series. Not even just the Marlins coming in as a team. 93. No.
Right.
10 years later.
So Chris has never lived in a non-Marlins world.
No. He almost was born outside of the Florida Marlins. Put it that way. Imagínate eso. Like, you're wearing an old school Marlins hat. I'm wearing an old school Marlins hat. He was almost born with just the Miami Marlins.
And that horrible rebrand. Oh. Okay, funny story.
They try to fix it.
Before we pivot from that. So I'm a big fan of ballparks.
Yes.
Right. I think I told you that I've been to
almost all of them, right?
I've been to 26 of the, now I was 30, but now 29 since the Oakland Coliseum is gone. So when the Marlins got their stadium, I mean, we were getting a ballpark. I mean, I went through the ballpark trauma of Miami. Like, if I was like the person like in charge of it, right? When it was like, first it was going to be where it is now, the Orange Bowl site. For a minute, it was going to be next to the AAA downtown. Yeah. Then they were going to leave to like San Antonio. Then it was going to be next to Joe Robbie Stadium, which I still call Joe Robbie Stadium.
Joe Robbie forever.
Forever.
AAA and Joe Robbie.
Always. So all that bullshit. And as a big fan of ballparks, I obviously bought season tickets for the inaugural season. So because I had bought season tickets, I got invited to all these events, right? And I remember me and a buddy of mine, we were invited to like a pretty big event, and that's when they like unveiled the new logo for the Florida Marlins. And I remember when they like showed it to everybody, and here's our rebranding. I was like, are we being punked? Like, is Ashton Kutcher gonna pop out of here any moment? Like, because this just did not happen, right? Especially since the Marlins had such a really nice aesthetic, right? From the teal to the black, the pinstripes, the silver, like it was almost perfect, right, for being an expansion team. And I'm like, oh wait, I'm still processing this. This is where we were and what we went through.
That's how many expansion teams. I want to look that up. How many expansion teams have had a rebrand, and how many of them have completely destroyed the historic one that they had previously?
Yeah.
Because you mentioned your friend that was a diehard Rockies fan.
They've
kind of
still
stayed
the same
pretty
purple
traditional.
and
They
all
also have pinstripes too.
yeah,
Like,
the Devil Rays.
they did have one.
They did have one.
Yes,
but was
which
it?
I think they should go back to the old one was the purple.
Yeah.
And the actual stingray and stuff.
Yeah,
and this one was baby blue and navy blue.
But nothing is worse than
no.
than what the Marlins
And
did.
everyone will tell you that because it's one of those teams that just because of the uniform, much like your friend that was a Rockies fan,
Yeah.
Coquito for the uniform. The same thing with that colorway. People fall in love with that. I'm wearing a Mariners jersey with this Marlins hat. It kind of flows. You didn't even realize.
I did a double take. I was like, I mean, I know about the logos. I was like, oh yeah, even me, it caught me like.
But that color scheme, it just, yeah.
And yeah, as you said, they tried to correct it with the de colores thing. I give them effort for, the first step in realizing there's a problem is admitting there's a problem. Is fixing the problem, is admitting there's a problem. So clearly they admitted there was a problem. They were like, yeah, we got to move back from this. What I think it's really interesting is that when you go to the store in the ballpark, they probably have as much merch of the original logo than the new logo.
Yeah.
They have a lot. And then I think they have like one hat of that Forsaken era that we shall not talk about further.
And it's tucked away in the racks of the hats too, so it's kind of like if you find it, compradelo, because we don't want to sell
I remember also, again, because I know about ballparks and stuff like that, and shout out to Miami Stadium. Do you follow them?
Shout out Miami Stadium,
one of the best sites out there. I sent him a lot of pictures of the Orange Bowl because I had a lot of footage of the Orange Bowl, and I went to the Orange Bowl Last Stand, which was a public event, and took pictures of everything. So when they were building Marlins Park, the part on the east side of the stadium that it looks like the letters from the Miami Orange Bowl.
And it's kind of like, yeah.
I remember the guy was like, oh, because these are the letters of the Miami Orange Bowl. And I'm like, are they the real letters? And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, I was like, dude, métele ese cuento a otra persona. But those are not the real letters. Like, they're made out of cement. Like, again, you can fool the general public, but you're not fooling this guy.
Not a real one. Not a real one. Yeah, I love that design that he has of the no block with the parking of the Orange Bowl.
Yeah.
It's got the artwork Atomics on there, and La Gallina. He has the Miami Arena. So yeah, the OG spots I appreciate. Joe Robbie forever. AAA forever. And RIP Miami Arena.
Oh yeah, the pink elephant and proud. I went to many concerts there, but yeah, whoever calls it, especially Joe Robbie, like Hard Rock feels a little bit better because they did completely overhaul the stadium, and Hard Rock is a more established.
You couldn't
brand.
even say it there. See,
yeah, I know.
2 times.
But when it was like Land Shark Stadium. Let's not forget Dolphin Stadium and Dolphins.
Yep.
Stadium.
People forget that too. Yes. I think the closest one to hold might have been Pro Player.
Pro Player was there for a while.
People had a good time saying it, and
then there was Pro Player Park and Pro Player Stadium. So let's see. It's Joe Robbie, Pro Player Park, Pro Player Stadium, Land Shark.
I don't know if we're going. You going in order?
Am I going in order?
I don't know.
Player Park, Pro Player Park came before Pro Player Stadium because the reason they switched to Stadium was because then it was PPP.
Yeah.
So then it was Park Stadium. Then that was for a while Pro Player. Then it was
it Land
Shark? No. Then it was Dolphin and then Dolphins.
Yes. And
then it was Land Shark. And then, of course, the best one of them all, Sun Life Stadium,
baby.
Because nothing says Miami more than an insurance company that's from another state, right?
It was a wordplay for them. They forgot it was a company.
So, anyway, pivoting back to what we were talking about, the no cell phones.
Yes.
I often think about that all the time. Like, I'm like, going to leave it. So you think you're there? You think you could leave it?
I think I can, but for these professional reasons, it might be a little difficult if someone says, hey, next time you produce, pero let me tell you, get some BTS on your flip phone.
Right.
You know, and then post it onto Instagram from that.
Is there any flip phone that has the camera capability of like
there might be, and I think it's the ones that are like literally glass, like a Samsung one.
Yeah,
and I can't be trusted with that.
That's a smartphone. Yeah. It's a regular phone.
I need a
like a real flip phone.
I'm hanging up on you.
A clamshell.
Close the phone. I need one of those flip phones. Do I think I'm there? Yes. Do I think I could be there with everything going on? No.
That's how I feel about it too. I could leave social media behind. I could. Or at least check it maybe once or twice a month. But the thing is that with Pero let me tell you, and with being Pampollo, I can't. I can't. And then, you know, for me especially, I'm very, very, very particular on the aesthetic of things. Like they have to look a certain way. Like I lose sleep over that. Like I lose sleep on color schemes and how the grid looks. And Ishmael and I are not like, you know, the two businesses we have together. We don't gel with that. And I like my grid to have harmony. His is chaos. And I lose sleep over that. So I'm like, no, I can't relinquish control.
Does he say it's controlled chaos at least?
Because the thing is that I like, especially on Instagram, that's obviously the medium is just pictures. I like for there to be a flow. Like I like when you go to the grid for like the color to be uniform, for there to be a flow. And then especially with being Bamboyo, I remember when we first started our Instagram, and you know, he did it with the right intentions. Like Ishmael would post like where we were at, like, okay, this Sunday we're going to be here, and this Sunday next week we're going to be here. And I found that we were talking about everything but showing our food. Or we would have like one bad picture of our food. If you go back on Ping Pampollo's Instagram, you can see the moment that I took over. Like you can see the moment. I'm like, oh, this changes. And you know, again, there's not a right or wrong answer, but I'm like really, really anal about that. So I was like, I can't. But for personal, like, yeah, sure.
That's your creative shining that you were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
That you guys kind of yin yang.
Yeah.
But I think it also has to do maybe because Ish growing up was able to be more expressive artistically.
Definitely.
And then, so now you're like,
definitely.
That's why
when we started working with you and with just everybody here, remember I told you several times, I'm like, you guys get it. Like when I tell you this is what I'm seeing, that you guys pick up on it right away, and I'm like, okay, there we go. I know. Okay, I can trust these people. Like, because you know, sometimes you have a vision of something, and it goes a different way. So,
do you guys have the same vision for? I mean, you maybe weren't expecting 300 plus episodes and everything, but did you guys have somewhat the similar vision
of the
But let me tell you, the podcast moving.
We did. And I think. Look, I think that one of the most important things in a working relationship, because I've said this before, even though Ish and I have been friends for 30 plus years, prior to us working together, I probably would have told you that of all my friends, he would have probably been the one I would have worked well with the least. Like, I think him and I would have butted heads because Ishmael could be very sarcastic, and that's my sort of like nails on a chalkboard type shit. And I think that we worked well together. And I think that this is also something very important whenever you are working with a team of people, is you have to know what everybody brings to the table. And if you do, I'm not going to question you. Or maybe I'll question you, but I'm going to ultimately leave it up to you, because I know that this is what you contribute and this is what I contribute. So yeah, you need to obviously tell the other person, hey, we're going to do this and this and this, and I wanted to let you know. But ultimately, you have to know what you bring to the table. Because if you know what you contribute and what you bring to the table, you could stand confidently and be like, well, you have your lane, I have my lane. And this is how this works. And I think that that's how we've been able to very successfully navigate two businesses, because at this point in time, that's what we do. I mean, that's not to say that there's sometimes I want to strangle him.
Like any relationship that there's like love involved in, there's going to be a give and take. And sometimes he's going to want to strangle you, you want to strangle him, but you guys see the greater picture of everything. And 30 plus years, no hoa.
Yeah. And you, I mean, I know you've said that you've tried to get into comedy, or you've been in comedy. So who do you think, like, who are your comedic inspirations? Because, you know, the thing about comedy is that I don't know. I've always, because I'm from like the Jim Carrey era, which I guess so are you.
Yeah.
I always knew there was more to Jim Carrey, right? And I think that's the case with so many comedians, that you know there's more under the surface, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's any, I guess, visual performer, you know, actor, singer, whatever, that there's so much more than just what meets the eye or comedians. There's a story there. So, well, like, what are some of the people that inspired you?
Jim Carrey was an inspiration, but I mean, from the beginning, Robin Williams.
Yeah.
Robin Williams is number one to me. When it comes to a working actor, working professional with a comedic intention, but also delivered with an emotional tone and everything, he's always been number one to me. He always felt like that uncle that I thought I had, or I wish I had. And Robin Williams, number one. But then like silly, dumb stuff, like Will Ferrell's one of my guys. Like when it comes to dedication to character and just like remaining in this sketch character that he develops, I've always loved Will Ferrell. A lot of SNL alumni.
Oh my gosh.
So
SNL is
throughout
like
the years, but
SNL is such an incredible sort of machine, if you will, because I feel that that's a type of show that could have gone so wrong.
Massively, especially when it was starting up, because it was starting up in the 70s. So it could have been one of those things that had lasted 6 episodes or maybe one season. But a lot of SNL alumni, more like the ones that I probably grew up watching more of, but I studied it all the way back to the first season. This movie that's coming out on Saturday night. It's like
You were telling me about that.
It's like the 36 hours leading up to the first episode ever. I can't wait for that. But I would say like Amy Poehler, Tina Fey, Rachel Dratch, they were huge for me. Jason Sudeikis, Bill Hader. Bill Hader for me is probably one of my biggest inspirations, and his dedication to character as well. He does accents. His work on Barry, which isn't a comedy, but has a couple jokes, this and that. But the way that, like you said, Jim Carrey, there's more to him. There was more to Bill Hader than just doing Stefan on the Weekend Update, even though it's incredible. And all his other impressions, he does a Vincent Price impression, like deep cuts only.
Thriller.
Conan is a big inspiration for me across the board, because he's always rolled with Andy as his sidekick. He's done like the travel shows. He does the podcast, Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. He's had the same crew working with him and writers.
You remember when he was on his show, the segment, in the year 2000, in the year 2000. Chris wouldn't know.
No. Oath. Pre-Chris. That's another reason why I loved him so much, because like the outlandish segments that he would try or whatever, like this needs to live somewhere. And he's a Harvard guy, so he'd be the smartest guy acting so dumb, but National Lampoons comes from Harvard and stuff. So comedy comes from this like zoomed out place of like George Carlin. We're doing stand-up. That's a different thing. Like I love Richard Pryor, Chappelle, George Carlin, local people. I love Mario Ramil. You were talking about him earlier. He's a guy that gets it when it comes to the mannerisms and who we are, but also just outside of here too.
Mario Ramil,
he's a sponge.
Because I mean, I think that some people can be funny, but they're not necessarily like actors, right? They may just have a punchline. I mean, obviously he's funny, but he has this gift of impersonation of like the devil's in the details. Like he did, I think when he was on our show, not now the show that's going to premiere, but the first time he was on our show last year, he had just dropped a skit where he was like the Cuban father in a restaurant asking for the bill. Have you seen that one? All the mannerisms that he did, but they were spot on, like spot on.
Because
right?
you've either seen that guy or you know that guy, or that's your dad or your tío or your abuelo. It's so representative of that. That's why it hits and connects.
Right. But that's what I think is so people that are comedians have such an incredible gift, because those are things that are mundane, but they pick up on that. There's a local comedian as well called Eddie Suarez. We've had him on the show, and he's Cuban. He's only been here like 2 years. So a lot of his comedy is Cuban centric. And when I mean Cuban centric, I mean like really heavy in the characters and mannerisms of like Cubans, especially Cubans that have come in the last like 10, 20 years. And it is incredible how he personifies these people in just like the smallest little things, you know, just really, really gifted. Another person that I really like that I hope we get on the show next year. Again, he's been on our show, is Dairon.
Oye,
Dairon.
Yeah.
By the way, do you know his story?
Not, I mean, he was working as
Dairon is a pharmacist.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
a realtor,
Yeah.
right? Because what is more Miami
I knew
than, you know, I mean, if you're from Miami, you got to have a realtor license. Like, who are we kidding?
Facts.
And he started doing YouTube videos, and that opened up this whole career in comedy. I remember that Dairon had a skit where he was pretending to be una vieja cubana, and he started doing this thing with his shirt here, like vieja cubanas do, like, it's, you know. And I'm like, again, those small little details that, like, you have to have a gift to be able to pick up on. First of all, pick up on that, and then turn it into comedy.
That's where my mind always goes. The devil is in the details. I've always been big on like the glue that holds things together. That's what makes things happen. If it wasn't there, nothing would happen. So I always would go to like the food court and just sit around and just watch people.
Food court.
Just watch people, different nationalities, different families, different everything, acting out.
Right.
And me just sponging in all these little details. Same thing, Nochebuena.
Mm-hmm. That's a big one.
New Year's Eve, you know, Thanksgiving.
Mm-hmm. That's coming up.
All of these, you're there and you're sponging in all of these personajes, all of these characters, whether they be your own family. Again, that's why it might connect like, oh, yo tengo un tío like that. Or it's at the food court and it's like, I remember seeing this person. I worked with someone like that.
Right.
I feel like that's where they really spend their 10,000 hours, is literally just existing amongst all the other personalities and sponging that in. Right. That's what I've done. And this is the first time I'm saying it this episode, but that's what I did as an only child.
Right.
Every podcast I've been on, I said only child 150 times.
Yeah.
But that's what I would always do, because I'd be alone the majority of the time, but in all these random rooms and a part of these random conversations that then I'm like picking up the mannerisms. Right. I don't care what they're saying. For me, it's how they're saying it.
Right. Right. That's again, that's a gift that, you know, you have, because it's when it hits well, then you realize like, wow, not everybody can do that. I remember you know, Jenny Lorenzo.
Oh,
you know,
abuela.
You know, Jenny Lorenzo's abuela. I mean, she's been doing that character for years at this point, and we all love it. And again, I remember when my grandmother passed away 2 years ago. My grandmother was like the person I've ever been the closest to in like my whole life. Like, it's incredible, like the connection her and I had or still have. I remember that after my grandmother passed, her abuela character now meant something different to me. Because now it was sort of like that character sort of honors that abuela. Because if you really think about it, if you want to think about it in a really sort of morbid way, a lot of abuelas that are that character are sort of dying out.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how you know material is good, that it can mean something at one point to you, and then in another stage of your life, it means something else. So
That's beautiful.
we're getting here deep on, pero let me tell you. So, so I'm getting a little thirsty.
Ooh. It's that
So
time.
usually at this point of the show, we give the last soda, but we're happy to say that we are working with Florida Dairy Farmers again, and they're going to be sponsoring our last soda of the desert, which now, since they're going to sponsor this segment, it's going to be the last Coquito.
Ooh.
Not the last Coquito of the desert, the last Coquito of the party.
Ay.
Right? Because
Okay.
who's going to have Coquito in the desert?
No.
They're going to, my
Felicidad.
God, milk shirt. Because, I mean, let's face it. Coquito is Puerto Rico's gift to humanity. Just the same way that Pan de Bono is Colombia's gift to humanity.
Yes. Agree on both.
So starting today, we are going to have, thanks to our sponsor, Florida Dairy Farmers, we're going to be having our last Coquito of the party. So Junior, our wonderful co-host, who do you want to give a shout out to this week?
Oh, this week I would like to give the final Coquito to my father.
Okay.
Last week on Friday, I drove him to the airport because he was joining the good people at Blue Missions, a part of a mission trip, climbing the highest mountain in the Caribbean on a 8 to 10 hour hike, 10 miles, to go provide clean drinking water for a small town there in Santiago. I forgot the exact part in Santiago, but Santiago in the Dominican Republic.
Wow.
You asked me about my comedic inspiration, Robin Williams. My life inspiration is my dad. And I'm giving him the Coquito, even though I want to give it to more people. He's getting it first and foremost for everything that he's currently doing right now, because he gets back tomorrow actually from the trip. And just in general, everything that he's done for me, I wouldn't be here without him either. So the first one of hopefully, like you said, maybe come back, give another one. But
I'm sure you will.
First one goes to my pops.
Well, and it's good that you're giving him a Coquito, not just a random soda, right?
He's really going to appreciate
he's getting
that
a
one.
Coquito. Well, I mean, you can do better than giving a shout out to your parent.
Turn the tables to you, good sir. And
so I want to give a last Coquito this week and a shout out to friendship in general, but I really had friendship come through for me this week. So as you know, Pin Pan Pollo, our side hustle. We had a really hectic weekend this past weekend. We were at the Culture Fest for the Miami-Dade Public Library on Saturday, which is an event with like over 1,000 people. And we were the main food vendor. And Ish is very graciously or ungraciously out of town. So I had to pull out on my own. And I had my friend Jesse and my friend Daisy. But Daisy I've been friends with many years, but my friend Jesse from Flying Hippo Pizza helped me on Saturday. And it was a pretty big event. But most importantly, on Sunday, there was an event at the Biltmore Hotel called Heritage Fire. And Heritage Fire is an event where they get the best chefs and the best restaurants in Miami. I mean, we're talking about Eileen from Finca, Eating House, Rusty Pelican, the list goes on and on and on. The best chefs, best restaurants in Miami, and they have this event. And at the end of the day, people get to pick what their favorite food was. And we went last year and we went this year, and I always feel a little bit of imposter syndrome there because I'm not a trained chef, and I'm going up against these behemoths of like renowned chefs that have won awards and all this stuff. And Jesse and Terry from Flying Hippo Pizza gave up their weekend to come help me at Heritage Fire, which is no small task. And thanks to them, we won.
Wow.
We won the event.
Congratulations.
We won the event.
Shout out to the team for pulling up, man.
And you know what? It's really incredible and just amazing that, you know, again, the bonds and friendship. I went to high school with Jesse, but I wasn't friends with him in high school. Like, we've only reconnected maybe in the last 2 years. That him and his girlfriend gave up the weekend for me to do this for me. And it's just, I want to give them and I want to give Flying Hippo Pizza a shout out. And pero primos listeners, if you haven't followed Flying Hippo Pizza on Instagram, do so now. They're also a pop-up like Ping Pong Pollo, and they make incredible pizza. And I'm not just saying this because they're my friends, but they really, really are. So I wanted to give them a last Coquito and give them a shout out. So because friendship is so important, and
Very
and
important.
I also want to give you, I know Ishmael gave you his last soda last week, but I just wanted to let you know that we really appreciate you coming into the show. And it's funny because I don't know if it was last week or a couple of weeks ago that I was talking to Ishmael, since, you usually our producer, so you're trapped in the box with us. So, obviously the three of us share the recording of the podcast. And I was telling him, I'm like, you know what? Like, there's just some people that you meet that the moment you meet them, I'm like, I sense good energy, like just really good vibes and good energy. And that was you from like the moment I first met you. Just this positive, like energy, and like the hugs and like the love. And you know what? You know why that's important? Because a lot of times people say that type of stuff, but then, oh yeah, we got to love each other and we got to be nice to each other, blah, blah, blah. But then the words and the actions don't really meet. We know that. But with you, it's like 100%. And it's like you feel that energy immediately. So,
That's why I asked you, can I give more than one shot?
So Coquito for you too.
Because damn it, I wanted to give a Coquito to my dad. I wanted to give a Coquito to Steph and Luna, which keep me going. But then I wanted to give the Coquito to you and Ish for having me a part of this, even as a producer. Because still, it's your baby that you brought in here. And you could have easily been like, oh no, we want to do it a certain way, etc. But the trust that you guys have given to me as well, which has been accompanied by nothing but love and respect too. And this is a place that I feel celebrated and not tolerated. I feel appreciated, and I'm glad that you guys feel that from me as well, because it's all I got to give, And we were just all cut from similar cloths here, I guess.
It's funny because when I knew Ish was going to be out this week, I'm like, can Junior co-host? Because I know you're co-hosting, you can't produce. I'm like, is Chris gonna produce? Produce.
Shout out to Chris.
So shout out to Chris. I mean, Chris is another MVP. So nothing but love here on Pero Let Me Tell You. So everybody, remember to grab your. We hope you listened, laughed, and learned. And as always, remember to grab your pastelito, your croqueta, and your coquito. And especially now that the holidays are coming up, which it's incredible that we're here again. A coquito will do. So have a great weekend, everybody, and we'll see you next week.
Cheers.